Like, I don't think that there has been an iteration of Mean Girls that has not absolutely slapped. Hi, my name is Madeline and welcome to my channel where I talk all about film, movies, and entertainment. I have a special interest in adaptations as someone who both loves reading and loves watching movies. This is something I'm super passionate about. For this video, I'm going to be talking about the recent Mean Girls adaptation that was released in theaters. I saw it recently and I really want to talk about it as a fan of the original 2004 movie and someone who loves the Broadway musical. But before I get started, make sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you have any interest in watching more of my videos. I will be releasing new videos every single week about any kind of film adaptation with a specificity in casting and reviews. And with that, let's get started. So for the first part of this video, I really want to address the writing of the new Mean Girls movie. Because both the original film, the Broadway adaptation, and the new film were all done by Tina Fey, I think it's really interesting what lines of dialogue and what plot points stood the testament of time and were able to be reused over and over again while still feeling fresh and being gifted to a new audience. One thing I really loved about this new film is how it reused a lot of the iconic lines of dialogue from the original, like "she doesn't even go here" or "so you think you're really pretty." And those are such quotable lines. It's what made this movie so iconic when it was originally released. They are part of the reason that this movie has been so popular for so long. And to reuse those lines in a modern adaptation and to give them to a new audience, it's a way for these lines to live on and connect the different communities who were introduced to this story via the original movie or the Broadway show or this new adaptation. And one thing I will also give credit to the movie for is that the modernization of certain details to match the current audience were fantastic. Having Regina revive the wet look as part of the revenge instead of the cutting the circles out was so good. I absolutely loved it. But there are certain things that are no longer appropriate for these audiences that they also stripped out. Like the whole thing with Coach Carr and all of these different jokes are no longer funny. These lines of dialogue that haven't aged very well don't detract from the overall dialogue of the film. They don't give you any point of pause because it's something that they didn't feel was necessary. And I love that Tina Fey is able to recognize that in her own work and be able to rework it for a different group of people, a different demographic. Furthermore, with having all of these different modern takes throughout the film, one thing I also thought was really cool was the references that they made to the original 2004 movie. Having examples like Gretchen saying that fetch is slang from some old movie is really cool. Lines like that are really fun because even if you weren't a fan of the original film or you were too young to have watched it, that line is still funny because this movie was so iconic in pop culture that even people who aren't that familiar with it know that fetch is from the original Mean Girls. Another line that was referenced to the original movie that I loved was Principal Duval saying that in all his 35 years of teaching, which is a callback to in the original film, he says, "in all my 15 years of teaching," talking about the fact that the original Mean Girls came out 20 years ago. And it's almost like this weird reality shift thing where you're wondering if these movies have actually happened in the same universe. It's so cool to see the tie-overs without having to affect the plot. My personal beef with a lot of adaptations is that a lot of times people will include Easter eggs, but they're making the Easter eggs so plot relevant that people who aren't aware of the source material are getting a little bit lost along the way. As someone who loves comic books and loves these big franchise superhero movies, I do get bothered by stuff like that when it starts to detract from the overall enjoyment of the film. In this case, this actually helps elevate the enjoyment of the film. It's stuff that you can nod at and you can have a little reference to without it becoming a sole focal point for the rest of the story. And I feel like Tina Fey, having been behind all three, she pulls it off flawlessly. She is so intelligent about it and so precise. And I think it is so cool that she's able to continue to retell this story for different audiences and have it hit literally every single time. Next up, I really want to talk about the music in this film. I will be completely honest. I was very skeptical when the Broadway show originally came out because I was curious as to why this was something that people thought needed to happen. I didn't really see the point of turning it into a musical, and I was wondering how it was actually going to end up being. And then I heard Taylor Latterman's rendition of Someone Gets Hurt, and I went down a very, very long spiral and ended up getting totally lost, totally obsessed in this original Broadway recording, and I've been a fan ever since. I absolutely adore this soundtrack. soundtrack. I love the show. I feel like it's so genuine to its source material. It honors it so well, and having this new adaptation where it's to be gifted to a wider audience, specifically to people who aren't as big of fans of musicals, I think that that is so cool. For this film specifically, I feel like it was interesting that the way that they did music. And I use the word interesting because I feel like it was very effective in some points and it took away from the film in others. Here's what I mean by that. When you are adapting a musical, a lot of times when it's in a film format, they are taking away from the camp style, the theatrics of musical theater. You've seen that in the Les Mis film, you saw it in The Last 5 Years. Movies like this, when you're putting them into a setting that is within the audience's realm of reality, tends to result in the theatrics and the dramatics of it being dull. And part of musical theater is that escapism. It's such a big factor that goes into it. There's a lot of factors in musical theater that contribute to camp, which is kind of over the top, overzealous, ostentatious, to the point of almost seeming ridiculous and impossible. And that is so key to musical theater. That's what makes it so fun to watch. And taking that away when you're taking a show and placing it into a film format detracts from the use of music. When you're taking something like a Broadway show and putting it into a film format, you have to be able to recreate that feeling of live performance, that sense of dramatization, so that it still holds up even though it's in a different viewing setting. In this film, there are 3 songs I really want to focus on that show very key examples of the way that music being unchanged works well for the film. Changing it can actually add to the intent of the song being used, and changing it can detract from the overall intent of the song. So for the first example, I want to talk about Revenge Party. In my opinion, as someone who loves a Broadway show, Revenge Party was by far the least altered song in terms of composition. I know that a lot of the lyrics were changed, and I'm totally fine with that. I will reference Tina Fey's writing again. Changing things to fit a more modern audience, adapting lyrics and lines of dialogue is totally okay because the fun theatrical nature of the song is still present. So for this song, it's all about having these runaway thoughts and this fantasization of what they're going to be doing to take down like this popular girl at school. The tone and the messaging of this song is super chaotic, very unhinged, and that is emphasized by the visuals happening on screen. You have everyone dressed up in these colorful outfits, and there's a big parade happening in the hallway, and there's flowers and confetti everywhere, and it's like this total dreamlike state, and it makes sense for the purpose of the song, which is setting up their revenge plans. It's big, it's fun, it's crazy, it's chaos, and it's so enjoyable to watch because it's matching this excited, energetic nature of the characters who are delivering it. It matches the tone. The song is crazy. It's crazy. And it's so fun, and getting to see all of that chaos happening visually reiterates the lyrics of the song. In contrast to that, in songs where the composition is altered, they either worked really well for the intent of the song in the film, or they detracted from the overall message that was supposed to be displayed. Take the song Someone Gets Hurt. That's when Regina is being established as the main antagonist in this film. It's at the Halloween party. She is convincing Aaron to get back together with her, and throughout this song, she's talking about the fact that she's stuck in this performance of being the queen bee. She's not really all that bad, but the composition is altered from the Broadway adaptation to be a lot more in the pop style and sitting in a different place in Renee's voice and being delivered in a specific way that makes the messaging of the song come across even more malicious. The dark setting matched with this very heavy bass that's not really present in the Broadway soundtrack version of this song, and having these visuals of her walking through these people who are completely frozen. She's able to manipulate them to her will. It really shows just how malicious Regina's intent is. And it works that the composition is altered throughout this song because it matches that tonal shift. In the Broadway show, it's a lot more piano focused, it's a lot less intense, and the breathiness in Broadway Regina's delivery is a lot more comedic. This is not a comedic song in any sense. This song is supposed to show us just how bad Regina is. And it does, because it's switched to be more of a slower, belting pop ballad. And not only does it emphasize the intent of the song in terms of the plot of this film, but it also makes it more appealing to non-musical theater fans. People go into this and they're not hit with a bunch of brass instruments, they're not hit with a bunch of overzealous, very golden age Broadway type vocal deliveries. They get pop music. And not only that, they get pop music from a pop star who they hear on the radio all the time. It's so much more accessible to larger demographics. And I feel like that is so fun to see in a musical on screen because you get to share it with a whole new group of people. Me, as someone who loves the Broadway show, I got to share it with the group that I went to see it with who aren't really Broadway fans. None of them had seen the Broadway show, listened to the soundtrack, and they came out of it loving the music of this movie. And I think that that's really cool. And it's such an important thing for people wanting to adapt musicals into movies to pick up on. But as much as I love the way that Someone Gets Hurt was done, the exact same thought process was used to alter Stupid with Love. And it actually ended up having the opposite effect. It detracted from the overall purpose and intent of that song within its place in the narrative. So the song is Katie's kind of I want song as a musical theater protagonist. She is setting up for the audience what her motives are going to be for the rest of the film, which is she wants to be with Aaron Samuels, the guy in her math class. This song in the Broadway show is very upbeat, very perky, very fun, and it's meant to sound almost like an energetic, rambling stream of consciousness. You start to see Katie kind of go down this rabbit hole within her mind of how infatuated she's becoming with this boy.
I'm astounded and I'm lost. I am filled with calculus. Does this guy work out? He must. I'll sweaty at the gym.
And having that rhythm and pacing really helps drive home her motives within this song. In the film, this song is slowed down, it's much more laid back and almost like so-fi pop, and I just feel like it takes away from the purpose of Stupid with Love within the soundtrack.
I'm astounded and nonplussed. I am filled with calculus.
And this is nothing against Ingori Rice's performance. She sounds lovely, but the lyrics in this song are supposed to be cringy. They're supposed to be weird. They're supposed to show kind of the awkwardness of this homeschooled girl in meeting a boy that she has a crush on for the first time. And having it slowed down just makes her seem like these kind of creepy lines are articulate and well thought out. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way to hear them delivered so unenthusiastically. And I feel like that just took away a lot from Katie's motives in this film. We know that that's her goal. People who are familiar with the story completely understand, but for a newer audience, it would make more sense to show how passionately she feels and how badly she wants to be with Aaron. It just seems like it was lackluster and she doesn't have this realization that her being with Aaron is possible until the very end of Revenge Party. And so I think overall, regardless of which songs you're altering and the ways that you're altering them, I feel like the two big takeaways from making film adaptations of musicals in terms of the soundtrack are making sure that the songs fit within the storyline and not distracting from their intent, and altering them in a way that makes it feel more accessible to larger audiences. As much fun as I think that the Broadway soundtrack as a whole is, I can see why a lot of the songs cut when making the film. Some of them just don't fit the tone or aesthetic of the film, or if they were put in, they wouldn't be accessible to larger non-musical loving audiences. So overall, I think that this film was incredibly thought out. Hats off to Tina Fey. She does not care what I think, but I absolutely love the way that she has continued to use this story over and over again. I love every single rebirth that this story has gotten. And despite my criticisms, I would definitely recommend this to a friend. I don't personally believe it has the same rewatchability as the original, but I did not go into this film thinking that it would. But I would absolutely recommend it to a friend. I do think that people should go and see it. So let me know if you went and saw the movie, what did you think? And if you haven't seen the movie, why not? Or has this video convinced you to go and give it a try? Please sound off in the comments with any of your opinions about the Mean Girls movie, either the original, the Broadway show, or this new adaptation that came out this month. I would love to hear about them. And I will see you guys next week for my next video.